Today, my guest is Brenda Harrington. She's a founder of Leadership Adaptive Strategies, LLC. She's an executive coach to global leaders in nonprofit, profit, and intergovernmental organizations. She helps leaders refine their leadership competencies so that they can make a bigger impact. She's also the author of Access Denied, Addressing Workplace Disparities and Discrimination. Our topic and conversation today is huge. It's important because it addresses all people and the productivity that we have or not based on our own subconscious, conscious biases. Many of us are not aware of what we're doing and our unconscious behaviors. And so through her book, she educates us. She helps us to understand the discussions that we need to have. And even though it's difficult to have, what we can do when we see disparity or discrimination. So whether you are a leader from the top all the way to the bottom, I hope you learn just as much as I did in this conversation. Hello, Brenda. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Melinda. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, especially with your wealth of knowledge of workplace discrimination and workplace disparities. I'm so interested and fascinated in this topic. And I wanted to get the sense from your perspective. What does that mean to you?
Well, I appreciate that. I wrote a book a couple of years ago, Access Denied, which addresses workplace disparities and discrimination. And that was my response to what I considered to be a bit of a call to action following the things that we experienced here in the United States the spring of 2020. It's not that those events were so new, but they were certainly alarming. But what really got my attention even more so was the conversations that emerged as a result of things that have been happening for a very long time. Certainly things that I've experienced over the course of my career and work with my clients and both individual clients and organizations, and the fact that it was just such a surprise to so many people. And so what I decided to do was put together a compilation of stories, no fiction. It's all real life experience, the lived experiences of people in the workplace who are impacted by some of these circumstances. But more than tell the stories, I wanted to create awareness for people who, for whatever reason, were unknowing, I'll say, and also provide tools. There are a lot of coaching and reflection tips in the book to help people who are experiencing or who are being impacted by these circumstances to work through them and to consider what their options are and to consider their choices. So when you ask me to define it, it really is, about just, not including everybody in the workplace. We hear the term diversity and inclusion so much. You can achieve what appears to be a level of diversity compliance by your numbers, but that's very different than really fostering an environment of inclusion, which means everyone is participating at a high level and, the reflection of equity across the board when you look at, how people are engaged in the work at all levels of the organization.
Right. And what were your findings? It sounded like you heard some stories and experiences that were surprising. The discussions
weren't surprising to me. I've lived them. I mean, right. So, my findings were that, over the 40 plus years that I've been in the workplace, there are a lot of things that are still quite pervasive and that are still not being addressed in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
And when I say addressed, it's interesting. All of this comes from, in my opinion, when you talk about discrimination, when you talk about xenophobia and all of the things that divide us as individuals, as people, it comes kind of from a place of fear and certainly unknowing, right? Yeah. People are more comfortable with people and environments and things that are familiar to them. And so when something is somewhat unfamiliar, they move away. But on top of that are the perceptions that people have of people, of a different gender, of a different race, of different ethnicity or nationality. And so when we're not willing or able to break through those barriers, then it results in marginalization. And so, I often say you can change, hearts and minds can change, but you can't change them. This is a very individual experience. And so through the awareness that I talk about, my hope was for people to, really begin to think about things differently. And I'm grateful that that is reflected in a lot of the feedback that I've been getting, when people read some of the stories and they start to reflect on experiences of their own in the workplace, they said, I had no idea, or, I'm thinking back on something that happened and now I understand more what might have been at play.
Yeah. So then it's helpful for someone who is not as aware, subconsciously or even consciously, to help them be more aware by reading the examples.
Right.
Because we all
Right.
have them. I mean, we're all running around with unconscious biases and
No question.
not even knowing it. And so educating ourselves by reading something like reading your book is the
Well,
first.
educating ourselves, but there's also, in some cases, unfortunately, there is an underlying belief that there are people who are more superior and there are people who are inferior, and ideally breaking through those barriers, and that's difficult
It is difficult.
because those are, then you're getting to the core, the essence of individual values.
Right.
So, but what organizations can do, certainly what organizational leaders can do, is to hold people accountable for particular, standards of behavior. And so, if you are a CEO or, a senior executive in an organization, making sure that people are working to a particular standard, people who are in, leading teams and in management roles, that people are getting the same access and people are getting the same level of visibility and engagement, and that just paying attention to make sure that people are not being marginalized.
Yeah, versus I think because it's such a sensitive topic, I would imagine some people don't even know what to do, don't even know how to address it,
Very
and
true.
just avoiding it. And then that
Yeah.
doesn't help the situation at all.
No, it makes it worse. It really does.
Yeah.
It amplifies it. I'm glad you said that, because people don't know what to do. And so to that end, they do nothing. And
Right.
hope is that, you know, certainly my book and many others will help people to figure out where to start, what to do.
Yeah. What could you share some things of what they can do when they see something happening like this?
Well, I hate to be cliche, we hear this with terrorism and everything else. You see something, say something. But the
Yeah.
reality is,
Uh-huh.
if you're questioning something, to be willing to address it, right? To be willing to look further and scratch beneath the surface. And, that shows up in a lot of different ways. So for example, it can be very awkward to be the only person of color, let's say, on a team, for example. So if you notice there's a team of, 6 or 8 people, and,
Yeah.
you're not hearing from one person, or you're not seeing this person participate in presentations or engaged in meetings and projects and things like that, that's something that needs to be checked out. Let's ask a few questions, and, what's happening, and those are simple starting points. Having
Yeah.
conversations with people, to learn more about their experience or what might be creating a barrier for them.
Right. Yeah, I love that. So helping just to be more aware and including them more in the discussion when you notice that they're not engaging as much. What if somebody is saying something that is discriminatory? How could I address it in a way that doesn't offend the person, but shed light? Like, can you give some tips on how to do that?
Well, when you say doesn't offend the person, can you?
Or I guess so that they're more open to hearing the feedback and not be defensive and say that's not me.
I'm not really,
So,
when you
so
say something this, go ahead.
let's say I said something, I asked a question, to somebody that may have been discriminatory.
Okay.
And then I'm a CEO and I saw that, I think that that's disrespectful or potentially could be discriminatory. How would I address it to that person in a way that's open
Yeah,
or
well,
invites a conversation, right?
if you're addressing it with the person who made the comment, I
Yes.
mean, it's just a matter of saying, that's, I think, well, there's so many reasons to do it. I mean, because you have personnel and risk management, all kinds of concerns. If you
Right,
hear
right,
somebody say something that is inappropriate. And
right,
so, in a situation like that, I mean, it's just a matter of saying, this is inconsistent with, our standard for communication, in the organization, or bringing it to the person's attention. They may or may not know. I don't know.
right.
But I think that it's a responsibility, you
Yeah.
know, for those kinds of things to be addressed. My
Mhm.
bigger concern is the person that it impacted, and
Uh-huh.
and their concern about being able to bring it forward, whether or not there is a safe space, for that individual to raise a concern if they feel that something has been said or done, that's offensive.
Do you recommend they go to the manager or the direct person or both?
It depends on it depends on the environment and the culture, honestly. There
Okay.
might be, I always prefer that, I always think it's best if people can, address those things one to one. If I
Mhm.
come to you and say, Melinda, the comment that you made in the meeting, made me uncomfortable, I would hope that we could talk through that.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, if possible, would be the starting point. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's necessary to escalate those things. What I don't think should ever happen is that you remain silent, because that, uh, one, sends the wrong message that whatever was said or done is okay. And,
Mhm.
and number two, the person may or may not be aware.
Right.
I do think it's important to know, though. I mean, the person may be fully aware and it might have been intentional. That's not okay either, right? But whatever the case is, whichever of those is the right answer, is something that needs to be revealed.
Right. Right. And having a conversation about it.
Having a conversation. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. For sure.
As difficult as it is. And so, can you share? I can imagine that this work is so powerful and meaningful in organizations. Can you share any, like, what are some of the results that you've helped some companies achieve when you feel they're more inclusive, going from and feeling more inclusive? Do you have
Well,
some?
it's certainly better for retention. And,
Mhm.
it has, both increased, there's tons of research that points to the
Yeah,
top and bottom line value
right,
of being more inclusive, not just from the standpoint of, race and ethnicity, but also gender diversity and everything else. I mean, because you just have the value and the benefit of so many more perspectives and ideas.
mhm,
And, it's less and less myopic. It's much better for retention when people feel included and when they feel a sense of psychological safety,
yeah,
and that they feel that they're in a place, that in an environment that is, where they're able to add value and have an impact.
right, right. They're spending so much time there, and they're
And
there.
so much time. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Are more companies more open to doing this? Are you finding?
Unfortunately, no. I think
Really?
that there's been, quite a rollback. It became the thing to do
Uh-huh.
2020, 2021. But there's been a significant rollback, unfortunately,
Oh,
in,
that's so hard.
focus and attention to
Yeah.
this, which is why, you know, among the things that I do just in general in the leadership space, I'm really committed to keeping this conversation alive.
Yes, yes, yes. And anything I could do too. I mean, it is so important and it's so unfortunate that I actually am surprised. I thought more companies are invested in seeing the importance of this.
What companies are doing, are things that are, I call them box checkers.
Check the box.
Somebody came to me earlier this week and asked me to participate in a training that included DEI, and the DEI portion was about an hour. And I said, no, thank you, because there really isn't much that you can accomplish in an hour except to say that, Melinda attended this training, but it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
And so it really is important for companies that are committed and who really take this seriously. It's important for this kind of thing and many other things to show up in the fabric of the organization. So I talked about accountability earlier. How are we holding managers and others accountable for the type of behavior that we want to see, for the type of culture and the environment we want to foster for everybody? And I think that that's where we have an opportunity to do so much more work.
Yeah, I could see that. And they might think that, doing this work is taking away from doing things from the bottom line, doing things to affect the bottom line. It could be seen as that. And that's unfortunate because it actually supports.
It absolutely supports bottom line growth, and bottom line growth.
Yeah.
But that's where I come back to, personal values and personal beliefs. So like most things, it starts at the top.
Yes. Changing the hearts and the minds from the top.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can you share what is your key insight or tip that you can leave our leaders today to help them with their leadership, unleashing their voice?
Sure. Well, just in general, whether we're talking about this or any other topic with regard to leadership, I think that one of the top leadership traits or competencies in our current environment is curiosity. And, we can't rely on all the things that we've done over the last 10 or 15, 20 years, even 5 years, to help us to address and navigate today's challenges effectively. So be willing to be curious, be willing to take some risks, be creative, innovative, and bring more voices into the conversation.
Yeah.
Leaders. I'm sorry, I was just going to say, some leaders seem to be of the mind that they need to have all the answers, and that's not the case at all. So the more you can be open and be collaborative, and just cast a wider net, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where, especially in today's, nobody knows. Like, there's so much going on. Nobody knows anything. I mean, and the more as a leader, especially if you're at the top, the more you can welcome and open and be able to listen to diverse perspectives, have an open mind, stay curious, and stay in the present moment versus kind of thinking about what worked in the past. Because
exactly,
you gotta be very curious about what's here today.
I talk to clients a lot, Melinda, about being careful with people like to lean on best practices. I said, there's some of that that's very valuable, but there's some of that a lot of it has outlived its usefulness.
Yeah. So, we're in a different day, different time, and I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Being more objective and being open and willing to be here.
Right.
Even though it can be very ambiguous. And
don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of not knowing.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much. Such valuable insight. I trust the audience has so much value and takeaways from this. I know I did.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time, Brenda. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.
It. Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for joining the conversation today. Are you curious on how you measure up with your ability to speak in flow? Come grab my free self-assessment at https://speakinflow.com/assessment. And I'll see you on the other side.